A lot happened in the first season, and the second wastes absolutely no time picking up where we left off. George is shocked when he sees Sarah show up right at the start of this new loop. She remembers the jumps but is confused over what's going on. Unfortunately, things take a turn for the worst when Shiv suddenly shoots Reggie. He's still alive. George scrambles over, and he confirms that Janet has left Reprov a message. Apparently, she can fix the loop. But in order to do this, she needs to tell Wes absolutely everything that's happened. Sarah waits in the car, as George reflects over his bad things in the past, including setting off the nuke and killing all those soldiers in the embassy. Wes is not happy when she finds out what's transpired, but she points out that Janet may have been taken back to 2012 and has a time machine too. Unfortunately, George is kicked out from the Lazarus Project. Wes tells him she doesn't want him within 100 miles of the place. However, she instead decides to let Sarah stick around. Given her 5-ml dosage of the serum, she's also stuck in the infinite time loop around with everyone else. The loops continue, of course, but Sarah slowly becomes more proficient in her role. With George gone, and Shiv surviving the gunshot wound, the gang join together and try to come up with a plan to stop this. The key here lies in 2012, and more specifically, 6 scientists that helped create a brand new time machine in the period where Janet has been sent back to. With the plan set, the women get to work, while George is left in the dark. George catches up with Sarah, who's not happy about him pressing for details about the project that he's been left out of. However, she does eventually hand over the secret files about the scientists that she's taken with her. Apparently, they're having trouble finding these men, but George wants to try and help. George pores over the details of the files, and he finds a clue in the form of custom-made graffiti trainers. The origin of this comes from Berlin, so off George goes to find Deckard Wheeler, and wouldn't you know it, he shows up in a bar and finds a lead immediately. Wheeler runs away, but he's struck down by a car. Naturally, it takes George a while to get the loot down without this guy dying, but he's not our man. Instead, this intel leads him over to Morocco, and then eventually a graveyard, where it turns out Dr. Wheeler is actually dead. George shows up to see Wes 10 loots later with details around Dr. Wheeler. He wants to be part of the team, and as a result he's eventually allowed back in, but only on desk duty. With this confirmed, Wes briefs the team and confirms that she's found 2 other scientists in this time, who are also dead. In Tokyo, Archie finds Dr. Lai dead, but a postcard that confirms a lead to Dr. Samson in Switzerland. Wes is not happy to approve this mission, but both Sarah and George are allowed to go on field duty all the way. George doesn't get a gun for this mission and has to play second fiddle to the others. And of course, when they arrive at the secluded Swiss hut, they find Samson is also dead. George slyly takes the guy's ring, which could prove to be a big clue, while the team deduce that Samson died after the checkpoint, meaning he could be alive. It's a tight window, and with plenty of transport to catch, it'll take them several hours to get there. Let's hope it's enough. George does find some clues with this ring insignia, which links to a speech about time travel from a Dr. Gray. As the camera pans around, it happens to show Wes sitting in the audience. For now, though, it's checkpoint time, and with everything cycling around, the squad launch into Samson's place and find him dead. They're too late. George continues to try and get affirmation that he's not a bad person, but out of everyone, it's Sarah who reassures him he's not, explaining why he's been shooting Reggie in the back of the head and not the front, to give the guy peace of mind and make sure he can't see what's coming. When he and Sarah head back home, Reprov happens to be there waiting for them. George points out that one of the scientists, Dr. Gray, appears to have been killed back in 2012, about a month after Janet was sent back in time. With Wes being in the audience, it surely can't be a coincidence, can it? Something has happened in the past, and they're all out of ideas. Thankfully, Reprov may be their key. Apparently, he was at Geneva during the checkpoint, and he can get there within an hour. During the next loop, Reprov shows up to see Samson, and gets there just in time. Armed guards arrive, and Reprov ends up shot in the process. While he's bleeding out, he had Samson drive off to parts unknown. When he does, Reprov phones Wes and tells her what's going on. Revealing flashes to the past, they'll show more of Wes' involvement here, which runs deeper than we thought. After seeing Dr. Gray in the crowd at this speech, in the present, it turns out she has a book in her drawer with the same insignia found on the scientist's ring and this organization. The episode review. The first episode of Lazarus Project wastes no time picking up where we left off. With a new loop to contend with, it turns out Shiv isn't going to die after all, which is a relief. George is kept in the dark over a lot of this too, until he's not, and even then, one can't help but question the validity of Wes' vendetta against George. I understand she's angry at him, but when she finds out he's been working to track down these scientists, there's no repercussions for Sarah, who handed these secret files to him in the first place. Seems a bit contradictory if you've asked me. The globe-trotting adventure continues here though, and there's a nice ebb and flow to this chapter, which moves at a pretty breathless pace. Fans of the first season should definitely be in their element with this offering. Roll on the next episode.